Welcome everybody to the Mandan Public School District. We're in Mandan City Hall, Bosch Relic Room. Today is Monday, February 3rd. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
I do have a couple. The list of policies under letter D, the policy EBJ that says equipment and supply records, that should be deleted. That should go under letter E. So just want to move that from a first reading of a policy to be adopted to a first reading of a policy that should be deleted. And then if it meets your approval, I do have two additions to the agenda. Letter F, I would like have an open enrollment application seeking a deadline waiver, and that should be in front of you. And then letter G, we received 2 teacher retirements today, and I've copied them front and back, and those should be laying in front of you as well.
Okay. What are the wishes of the board as far as with the agenda then? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, public communication. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to anything on the agenda? Anyone in the audience? Once, twice? Okay. Next up is the administrator's report. Special education update. We have Miss Julie Ketterling.
And I'd like to introduce Ms. Ketterling if I can. Ms. Ketterling was hired this summer as our special ed director. She had served a number of years with us as a special education coordinator, and she replaced Tracy Klein on July 1st. And I asked her to come and just share a little bit about what special ed does. Mandan belongs to a cooperative. It's Morton Sioux Special Education Unit. We're the largest member school, but there are several other school districts in that. And I will just turn it over to Mrs. Ketterling and let her talk.
You took over everything I was going to say, so I am done. No. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. I have to tell you, I was super nervous because these guys know that's probably one of the worst parts of me even applying for the job was the chance of getting up in front of people to talk is like, so makes me really nervous. But Julie Ketterling, I worked across the river for 25 years and basically worked in the areas of ED for Legacy High School and Century High School, and then 6 years ago switched over to the better side of the river and worked as a coordinator and kind of specialized more in the intellectual disabilities and that. And then in July, as Mike was saying, I switched into the director position. So it's been a really good learning curve. Some challenges thrown in the way with lots of health things with our staff and stuff, but it's going well so far. So I appreciate the opportunity to just visit with you guys for just a few minutes. As Mike said, there are 7 districts as well as YCC, part of the Morton Sioux Special Education Unit. And the handouts that I gave you list the districts along with the superintendents that are part of our Morton Sioux board. So they are active. We meet once a month, typically the 3rd Thursday of the month, unless there's nothing on the agenda, and we kind of postpone it and wait till the next time. So that is our meeting time. We are a partial serve co-op, meaning that each of our districts hires their own special ed teachers. However, we do contract with them for more of the related services, the OTs, the PTs, some of the speech language, the coordinator services, and then the psych services. So each district is responsible for that, which takes a huge load off of our staff for sure. On the first handout that I gave you, I did list some of the main things that are provided by Morton Sioux. And some of the main things, child find, making sure that the students that are eligible or could be eligible are going through that evaluation process. Providing those OT, PT, speech language, all those related services, the psych evals, and all of those different types of things. So the whole goal for the district and the unit as a whole is just to meet the needs of the students where they're at and determine the appropriate amount of supports that our students need. The next handout actually is a handout that comes from North Carolina, but it connects so closely to everything that we do here, and it really is a good overview for everything related to IDEA. And I'm sure most of you are very familiar with it, but if you ever want more information, I'm more than willing to sit down and visit more about it or have you stop in and chat about it. It's basically talking about any of the specialized instruction that our students need once they're eligible for services, the related services that go along with that, the accommodations that make everything appropriate, and then any of the assistive technology information that is needed to help the student be successful as well. The other key part of the IDEA is that it gives parents rights as well. So we work very closely with the parents, trying to make sure that they are equal members of the team and they feel that as we are going through evaluations and the IEP process. So the back side of that sheet is the different categories. And North Carolina on here does do it a little bit different. We do not list on our IEPs multiple disabilities. We would do that as more of a primary and secondary. And then the number 12 that is listed as developmental delay is actually considered non-categorical delay in North Dakota. But otherwise, they are all very good summaries of everything. And our non-categorical is ages 3 through 9. That is one of the areas, as we go through numbers in a little bit here, you will see has had significant growth, not only at Morton Sioux, but throughout the state. So just something to keep an eye on. The special ed process flow chart, for those of you who are not real familiar with special ed, this flow chart goes through the process from recognizing the opportunity that a student might have a disability, going through that pre-referral stage, and all of the things that go along with that. Once we do the pre-referral, we have to make sure that those interventions are in place. If the interventions are enough to meet needs, the whole process starts. If the interventions, the student still hasn't made the right gains, then we go ahead and go into the referral process and the evaluation, and then determine eligibility. Sometimes the student doesn't meet eligibility, and again, the process starts, and it may go into just a 504 for accommodations for the student, or it just may go through some conversations with staff members on how can we better meet the needs of the students. If we do go into that there is a disability, we determine which disability area, and then we go ahead and write the IEP and start the implementation of the IEP. I know that's very quick and brief, but does anybody have questions on that process at all? No? Feel free, if you're looking through this or you have questions at any point when you're thinking about different things, feel free to send an email, give me a call, stop in the office. I would love to chat more about it. The back side of that is the continuum, which I always think is interesting. And a lot of people ask about this often. The bottom of the continuum, of course, is our regular classroom. That is by far the least restrictive environment, and that's the environment that we hope for the majority of our students. And then we go all the way with lots of steps in between resource rooms, separate classrooms, separate schools, homebound or hospital settings. And the higher we go up, the less students, of course, we want up there, the less. So the one side goes up in the environment as far as restriction, and the other side goes as far as how many students are in those situations. So it's kind of just a nice chart. And I know there's a lot of overflow of talk of homebound and homeschool and all those different types of things. So this chart kind of narrows it down nicely just to give an idea of what that does involve. Just like any other area of education, special ed has indicators, and this year we were blessed because the around the state wasn't meeting some of the indicators, so they had to do another indicator to make sure we're meeting the indicators. So now we're at 18 instead of 17. But I think it's interesting sometimes to just look through some of the indicators. And this handout just goes through what those indicators 1 through 18 are, and then really hones in a little bit on how they impact us and the things that they're looking for. We've done really well the last few years as far as the main indicators, meeting 100% compliance on the ones we need to meet compliance on, and then the ones that have the lower compliance, we've been doing great with all of those. So we're making good gains in all of those areas. Questions on indicators at all? I'm going to skip over that little picture image because some of you may have seen it before, but I always think it's a good summary of special ed. But we'll skip over that a little bit and just look at the numbers, the number chart. And the left side of the chart is the state numbers, and then the right side is the Morton Sioux numbers from 21, 22, and 23. And this would be December 1st child count for both of those areas. As you can see, looking at those numbers, our autism numbers are actually up quite a bit, like 3% from 21, 22, and 23. And the needs of those students with autism is certainly becoming much more significant. And when you hear people requesting, we're asking for more resource room staff, more special ed staff, it's typically to cover some of the significant needs of those students coming in at such a young age with our autism, our nonverbal students and such, which are more in that category. You'll also see that if you go down to the the non-categorical delay, that's another one that's up. And that's that group that we were talking about, ages 3 to 9. By the time they turn 10, they have to be taken off of that. But a large portion of those students are often moved over to the autism category. When they're put onto an IEP or start receiving services at age 3, there isn't a true diagnosis yet. So we know there's a global delay in academics or a physical delays, cognitive delays, whatever it is. And so we categorize them with that NCD. And then as they come about with that actual medical diagnosis and we get more information, then they oftentimes move over either to an other health impairment, which you'll see is climbing, or the autism diagnosis. So when you look at numbers overall from 21 to 23, they have stayed fairly stable. If you look at that 644 over to 646, but it's kind of deceiving because of the severity of some of the disabilities. I think our MTS programs, all the RTI, the interventions we're doing, are certainly helping those students that don't have the significant needs, but it's those significant, complex needs that are really upping the ante a little bit for our teachers and the caseloads. So roughly about 14% of students in Mandan Public Schools, that's not Morton Sioux overall. It's really hard to come up with a full Morton Sioux number with the kids changes, but the Mandan Public Schools, roughly 14% of students are on IEPs. So, questions with any of those numbers? No? Okay. The drawing is just, you'll hear a lot about universal design when you're talking special ed or even education as a whole, and I always think this is a really good reminder of the image speaks for itself. Could you please shovel the ramp? Well, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. The whole scope is, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. And it's making sure that what we're doing is good for all students. It doesn't have to be something extra special for this small group of kids, because if it's helping these guys, it's probably helping the large group of them. And if anything, it's not hurting them. So just that reminder in that universal design piece of it as well. Okay, that's all I have for you. Amy bribed me if I kept it really short and sweet. I would get a treat tomorrow, so. But I really welcome you guys to stop in, to send an email, anything. I would love to answer questions or just get to know people. I'm on some of the meetings otherwise at the Brave Center, so I've gotten to know a few of you individually with that, and it's always fun to do that, so feel free to stop in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the administrative report, we have North Dakota School Board Association Negotiation Seminar.
Correct. That's this Thursday and Friday. Actually, Mr. Legacy is going to be attending both days, and Dr. Rederath and I are splitting Thursday and Friday. They'll let us split a registration, so we will get the information that we need to prepare for negotiations. And then the local government capital connection is February 18th and 19th. Mr. Peters has said he would like to attend, and we will get him registered. If any of you would like to get registered as well, let us know. I know we do have a board meeting the night of the 18th, so that may, depending upon how many people attend, we'll have to make adjustments there. But
Is there a deadline as far as letting you know for sure?
I don't think so. I think they do. They wanted it like a week in advance, but I think if somebody signs up late, I think unless there's a whole bunch of them, I think they'll accommodate.
Legislative update, Dr. Bitts.
It's early in the session, and I always say I don't get too excited until crossover. There's a lot of bills that get introduced, and I always say we'll see what survives on the House side and survives on the Senate side and makes it across. Property tax, I still have no idea. I don't know that they do either. I think it's going to be some sort of compromise between a primary tax credit. I think there's still talk of a mill levy buy down on the school side. I'm not sure what's going to happen. There hasn't been a lot of noise on those bills. We still have a month to cross over, so we'll see what happens there. The governor's budget, he's got 2% increase in per pupil payment for each year. The big funding bill that starts in the House has 3% for schools each year. Obviously, we're hoping for 4 and 4. We'll see how that turns out. We're also working to try to get within the funding formula, we get paid for special education. They include a special education factor in there. They don't want to pay. I'm trying to think how we don't get more money for more special education kids. What they say is that special education occurs at the same rate over time in all areas of the state, and they don't want us to over-identify students by saying, we get more money if we say you have a speech disability or a learning disability. So, but they have a factor in there for on every kid, there's a weighted factor, whether they're special ed or not, that covers special education. We're trying to get that increased. So we're working to increase the special education factor. We're also trying to, with our English learners, there's factors for those students as well, and we're working to try to get an increase. We're lobbying hard within the formula to get an increase in funding for our English learners. So hopefully we can get some, between the overall per pupil payment, the EL factor and the special ed factor, hopefully we can get more money into our school district so we can better serve our students. Go ahead.
Superintendent Bitts, I know there was a record number of bills that came in this year, or received a larger percentage of taking precedent, and I'm just curious what the volume is, and I know you're not worried yet, but.
No, I always, I always say last session was not a good session until the end when it was. So I always think that, there's going to be a lot of bills that maybe aren't real good for education or real good for our students. But I believe that over time, they'll sort it out and they'll get it right in the end. I want to say there's around 130 or 140 bills that deal with education in some form or another. And we've had hearings in Judiciary, House Ed, Senate Ed, so I think they're dividing the bills up into different committees just because there's such a volume. They can't put them all through the education committee, so that makes it a little more challenging to follow as well. I know one bill that probably will affect us. It just passed the House. I think it was 89-3. Is a bill that will require us to have a cell phone policy next year. I don't think that's a bad bill. It started out as it was going to be a total ban of cell phones, and then they realized, well, there's kids who they need it because of diabetes or different things, and there are times when teachers want them to use their cell phones to access something. So I think what they said is they'll leave it up to the schools. Locally, we're going to have to come up with a cell phone policy. And my guess is that looks different for a kindergarten student than a senior for us. So our policy and personnel committee will work on that next year, and we'll see. I'm guessing a template will come out from the School Boards Association, and then we'll work through that and adopt what's right for our students and our schools.
So the charter school bills was getting some play this week, and what are we, I mean, will you talk a little bit about how charter schools might impact public schools?
Yeah, charter schools are public schools. I have less. They get public money. They would get a per pupil payment just like we do. Somebody could come in and open up a charter school for music, a charter school for CTE, STEM, and then they would try to enroll kids in the Bismarck-Mandan area. I'm sure they would try to attract kids from New Salem and Flasher and Center and all over. They operate under a lot of the same rules as we. They're public. They have to be accountable. They have to get audited. I'm not sure where that's going to go. I don't know that there's a real need for that in our area. I don't think there is. I don't hear a lot of people clamoring for that. I'm not sure. I know there was a charter bill in the House that was defeated already, and I think there was a hearing today that I actually watched it online in the Senate. We'll see what happens with that. There's a lot of, I think there's 4 or 5 ESA bills. By ESA, I'm talking education savings account, where a lot of that money, you put money into an education, or the state would put money into an education savings account. The bill that they heard, or that's going to be heard tomorrow, would give up to 80% of the payment to private schools or home schools per pupil payment. I think it comes with a fiscal note of like $243 million. My problem there is there's no accountability for it. To me, if you're going to appropriate we receive about $40 million from the state, and we have to account for every nickel that we spend. Mr. Legacy does a budget. There's a bill. You can come out and say, I see you spent, old business. I see you spent $12.37 at Coast to Coast. What was that spent on? I want to see a copy of the bill, and Mr. Legacy has to produce it and show it, which it should be. Accountability is good. When you pay public dollars, you're accountable to the public. I mean, to me, that's a pretty easy concept. I don't have a problem with the ESA bills if they have some accountability and transparency. As a taxpayer, I expect that when I pay my taxes and the government doles out that money, that the people getting it are accountable for those dollars. Sorry, that's more than you asked for.
No, I wanted to hear that too.
Okay.
Any other questions? And I'm assuming eventually you're going to have a list of bills we're kind of following, numbers and stuff?
I do. Maybe I should send that to you. I get one from the administrators group. I get one from the school boards group, and DPI actually sends one out. There's hundreds of bills on there. I can forward those to you each week if you'd like that. I will do that. I'll forward you some. For sure, the school board one, and I'll send it to you in our meetings over tonight too.
It's always nice to have the number so you know kind of what you're searching for. So,
Absolutely.
next up, we got superintendent evaluation.
Correct.
Weird.
It's that time of year, the spring of the year, you have to evaluate me again. This is my summative or my final evaluation. And I think Amy's going to send that out to all of you tomorrow. And if you could have that back to her by Valentine's Day, that would allow her time to get that compiled and for you to approve it on the 18th when we meet again.
So, Okay, so yeah, so then we have to meet with you prior.
Correct. I think we have to have it, we could, if something happens and we don't meet, we have to have it done by March 15th. So we've got some time if,
Okay. So yeah, everybody get that back to Amy as soon as you get it, so. Next up, we have a consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have review and consider approval of previous board minutes, January 21st, 2025. Accept policy and personnel committee minutes, January 20th, 2025. And accept the facility and finance committee minutes, January 27th, 2025. What are the wishes?
I would move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Under unfinished business, we don't have anything, so moving on to new business. Review and consider approval of the minor elementary attendance area boundaries. Dr. Bitts?
correct. 2 years ago when we opened up Lakewood Elementary School, we had to redo our attendance area boundaries. We did that on our own. We used our best guess as to what those boundaries needed to look like to balance our enrollment. We have two areas that I think we didn't get right that we'd like to adjust. We've been doing this ourselves. When people come in and register, we have an area basically that we'd like to move out of Roosevelt into the Custer area. And that's the area, it basically would use Collins as the dividing line. If you're on the east side of Collins, you'll now go to Custer. It's probably a 4 or 5 block area wide by 8 blocks high that we would like to move to Custer. The elementary principals were involved in this. We took it to facilities and finance, and that would be one change. And then the other area that we would like to change is the area around the middle school. And basically, if you go north if you go north on Sunset, the middle school football field, those apartments on that side, the Terre of LA area, we put that all into the Red Trail area. That's Lewis and Clark, and it needs to be Lewis and Clark. Every student who's enrolled in the last 2 years in that area, we've put to Lewis and Clark. The families that are attending, we're going to let them finish attending where they are. We're going to continue to provide transportation. We're not going to bounce kids around and families around. We want to do right by them. But to balance our enrollment, the new kids in this area need to go to Lewis and Clark. Red Trail right now, I think every class up there is 24 students or higher. Red Trail is bursting at the seams, and we need to take some pressure off of it. So again, both of these were approved by our elementary principals, by the facilities and finance, and it would be our recommendation that you approve these changes.
So as far as what these changes, they aren't going to be a quick fix on changing students.
Well, correct. We don't pull kids out of schools. They're not widgets or nuts and bolts that you can just move them. They've got friends. They know their teachers, and if they're doing well there and they want to stay, we're letting them stay. We'll offer them to change, but
Okay. Any questions? What are the wishes?
I would move that we approve the attendance area boundaries.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minor elementary attendance area boundaries. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, review and consider approval of 2025 Mandan School Board election timeline. Mr. Lagasse.
Yes, good evening. It's hard to believe we're talking elections already, but it is time to set our election date. Our typical date for election would be June 10th, which is the second Tuesday in June. Our seats up for re-election this year would be Lori, Tom, and Jake. The two most important dates on that timeline in your packet, obviously election day of June 10th, but the filing deadline for candidates is April 7th. If we go with this, I would ask for your approval on the timeline.
Any questions on that information? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Mendon School Board election timeline. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, review and consider approval of the RFP for auction services to liquidate assets on the old Mandan High School.
Yes, it's included in your packet, the RFP for auctioneer services. Again, this service is just to liquidate extra assets from the old high schools. We're talking desks, lockers, weight room equipment, all those things. I'm getting about 40 calls a week that people want to buy right now. So this will get our process kind of moving. I'd like to get an auctioneer selected by our March 3rd board meeting so we can get this auction done really before summer starts, and that we can move towards demolition of the old building. Oh, yeah.
Will that auction be online?
Mike just reminded me that, yes, this will be an online auction. That's part of the process. We met with McLaughlin auctioneers out of Moorhead 2 weeks ago, I believe now. They liquidated Moorhead. They've done 5 other schools. They kind of talked through their process. That online auction is the right way to do it, I believe. That way everybody gets a chance to bid on, all the lockers and stuff that we have in there. Everybody can see it, that we don't have to come through in person. So,
So, oh, go ahead.
Just thought of something else. I do want to say, with the auditorium, I know a lot of people I've had come say, I bought a seat, can I have my seat? And yes, you can have your seat. They sometimes are on pedestals, but if you want a single seat that you bought, we won't sell those. We will try to give those out to the people who bought those.
As far as the number of items and stuff, is the auctioneer going to go through and determine those? Or who's
yes,
gonna do that
we are
process?
going to let them determine the lots and how they sell that. As we walk through with them, I'm not going to lie, there's so much stuff that I personally don't see a lot of value in. I want somebody else taking this that's done this, has the expertise on how they can maximize the return for us.
So anything that doesn't go is,
It's
oh,
going to,
bye-bye.
yes, yep.
Any other questions? What are the wishes?
I would move that we, what would I say, open an RFP for the auction services to liquidate the assets at the old high school.
We have a motion and a second to approve the RFP for the auction services. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, review and consider approval of the first reading of the following policies. Do you want to just go through all these, and if we have any questions?
Sure. That sounds good. Yep. The first is the wellness policy, ABCC. This is combining a couple of policies. This came out of our FDA food review with child nutrition, so that's where this one's coming from. I'll just keep going. If there's not any questions on these, please stop me. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. EBB, school safety, no real major concerns there. EBBA, emergency drills, just added our Mandan emergency response protocol to the bottom of it. That has been a new addition for us, for our staff this last year. Facility maintenance and repairs, probably the biggest thing that we adjusted here is adding the building principal into the policy. Really with our custodians and our food service, they are one of our go-to people with those individuals, and so we wanted them part of the policy. Equipment and supply records, we will get to that in the next section. DPI requirements and guidance for adult meals, no changes. Free and reduced lunch eligibility, few minor changes. We had a duplicate policy with that, so you will see the second one that is on the deletion. Insurance management, we had quite a few changes, mainly just simplified it. Nothing really substantial there, but simplified that. Workforce safety and insurance stayed the same. Facilities development and planning. It was a really long policy to basically say we need a facility and finance committee. So we simplified that to continue to need the committee, but just simplified the policy. Architect services had some changes, mainly due to some changes in law. that we adjusted. Facility project, facility and other real estate acquisitions, and the expansion change orders had really minor pieces to it. So those are the first readings of all the new or policies that we have. Any questions on those?
Questions? What are the wishes regarding the first reading of the policies?
Move to approve the first reading of the policies.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm not going to go through read them all, so they're all there.
That's fine.
Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, review and consider approval of the first reading to delete the following policies. We have a couple there, so.
Yep. So EEAE, free and reduced price meal eligibility appeals. We just had a duplicate policy, so this was the longer of the two, so we simplified with the other one. And then we also had equipment and supply records. It's just an outdated policy. It's not our protocol anymore. We didn't think we needed it there, so we chose to or are recommending deletion of that.
Any questions on either of those? What are the wishes then?
I would move that we approve the first reading of those said delete policies. Delete those policies.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the first reading to delete those two policies. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, we added open enrollment seeking a deadline waiver.
Yes, in front of you tonight is an application. This is a family that moved to Bismarck. They had 3 kids, 2 in the elementary and a junior in high school. They've enrolled their 2 elementary kids in Bismarck, but the junior in high school would like to finish here. It would be our recommendation that you approve this application seeking a deadline waiver.
Any questions on that?
Open enrollment. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the open enrollment seeking a deadline waiver. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Next up, we have a couple of retirement letters. Looks like this came in.
Correct. I don't like additions to the agenda. These just came in this morning. You can see the date on both of them. Mr. Seth Peterson and Mrs. Barb Quintus, both longtime employees of the school district, are retiring. Great employees. Hate to lose them. Excited that they are retiring on their own timeline, and wish them the best and want to thank them for their service.
Questions on those?
No, I'd move to accept both resignations and thank both of those educators for their amazing contributions to Mandan Public Schools. And I hope Mr. Peterson will keep taking tickets because he's so entertaining. So I don't know if we can add that. But.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the retirement letters from those 2 individuals. Amy, please call roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. Future meeting dates. We've got February 18th, regular school board, 7 o'clock, City Hall. Please note the time there. We have February 24th, student achievement, 5 o'clock, Brave Center. May 3rd, regular school board, 5:30 at City Hall. And May 10th, policy and personnel, 5 o'clock, Brave Center. March 10th, sorry. Any other meetings? Okay. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned.